Okay, come again here and do autism blog. Um, the history of autism. Um, autism was discovered in Germany. Autism means um, self person, I think, and um, they used to in the 30s and 40s. During the 30s and 40s, they would label it as different functioning levels. And then recently they took that out because you have autism, you have autism. Okay, and I will do the history. Okay. During the 30s, autism was discovered by Dr. Asperger's. He did like a self-diagnosis, and he diagnosed himself with Asperger's. And that um, that was diagnosed all the way up until 2015. They don't diagnose people with Asperger's anymore. They say it's autism. But I still say that Asperger's is still Asperger's, but it's still part of the spectrum because autism is a very complex disability. There's different uh, abilities in the spectrum. It's a spectrum. During the 30s and 40s, they would, in Germany and a lot of other countries around the world, would do experiments. They would take an individual who had autism, put them in an institution. Germany in the 30s and 40s, this would gas uh, them in their first concentration camps. And in like a towns, and they sold the Germans who lived there. The funny smell is just a new product that they were making. They would lie. And then one person who was a World War One vet said, "That's no product being made. That smells like a burnt body." That was the first person who spoke out, and then they took him and then they silenced him, or because he was a World War One vet, so he knew what the burnt body smelled like. But and Germany during the 30s would do lobotomies, and then in the 40s they started to gas people who had autism because they were like, well, they're undesirable, is what Hitler said, because he was nuts. Don't want to go too much into that, because and then during the 30s, 40s, 50s, Canada would institutionalize people with autism, and they would do lobotomies. Germany and the Soviet Union and Poland and Romania were the first countries in the world to outlaw lobotomies, but they still would institutionalize people who had autism. And East Germany would do experiments like they thought we had telepathic powers, and just because we could remember numbers and license plates, sometimes we can remember people's addresses. So they thought that we could be used as a weapon and took us with against our own will. Canada in during the 60s um, would put us into insane asylums because they thought autism was like schizophrenia, which is not. Schizophrenia is a brain disease. Autism is a disability, and uh, and they would put us in there. During the 60s and 70s, they would put us into a school institution. And in the 70s, Canada said, why are we taking kids out of people's homes into a school until June? Why don't they just go to the local school? And that's when they did that. But they would segregate us until 1970, until the late 80s. During 1979 till the early 90s, they would segregate people with autism out of the classroom into a different classroom, but they could still go to the same school as everyone, but they were segregated. But then the segregation laws changed and said, hey, they should be in the same classroom as everyone else. And that's what they did. To this day, we're still working on autism to make it more, there's still a lot to go. There's still institutions that need to be shut down. I just wanted to give you a brief history of autism. This is the end of this blog. I hope you have a good day, night, evening, and you are loved and you wanted to Zoom with your friend. Just send them an email and say what time and day of the week works. And yeah, I hope you have a good day, night, evening, and you are loved.